Hi everyone, this is Stephanie and I'm going to take you through the editing video for the potato sack pose. I have gone through all of the imagery. Oh my gosh, there comes an email. I've gone through all of the imagery from both Tuesday and Thursday, and we're going to be working with baby Mika here. So she was our almost 3-weeker, beautiful little clone of her mommy that came in from Waterloo for Thursday's class, and such a lovely little baby. So for example, when I'm looking at imagery, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about culling and what I'm looking at. I'm in ACR right now. For those of you using Lightroom, you'll do your culling and editing in Lightroom, but this is ACR. So we have a couple of images here that we're going to be looking at, and what I usually do is I go back and forth through the images to just see how much movement there is in the image itself. So you can notice here how the head did tilt on this image in between. Okay, so when you're editing, you want to look for things that are fairly close. This one's fairly close. I think more so I moved than the baby did. So just a bit of an inhalation when I was taking the image, and the camera lifted a tiny bit, so it shouldn't be too bad to realign those. So I'm going to take those and open those up into ACR. And you'll notice that in my ACR, I'm in a ProPhoto RGB color space, which is 16 bits of information, which uses all of the color information from the raw file. So if you have this set to 8 bits of information, you're actually cutting some of the color information out, and you're decreasing the quality of the file. So I do like to work in ProPhoto for ACR from these global adjustments. And then I work in Adobe RGB once I'm into Photoshop, just because the ProPhoto color space takes a really long time working with it in Photoshop. You'll see that pinwheel happening all the time as you're waiting for your elements and actions to function. So if you're working in Lightroom, you're in Melissa RGB, so you're already working in 16-bit information, so don't worry about that. The trick here that you want to know is that you're working on 2 different files, and you want to make sure that whatever you do to one, so for example, if you turn down the exposure, you can see it's only going to happen to one file. Whatever you do to one, you want to affect both. So you need to select all up here, okay? The other way that you could do this is just by clicking on Command if you're on a Mac, or Control if you're on a PC, and then selecting the second image just so that you have both highlighted, okay? And now when you make a change, you're going to be affecting both files, so that when you overlay these, the color and the temperature and the exposure are all going to be consistent. That's really super important, okay? So let's just open these up into Photoshop and I'll show you how we work on overlaying the imagery. So for me, I know that this is going to be the image I'm going to work with as a final image. So this is going to be the background that I'll be working with here. I like using this because you have the most information in this image. You have all of this flocati at the bottom, as well as the body and the face. And the only thing you're really replacing is going to be the hat, a little bit the forehead here, and then this hand-arm situation. So that's why I like to use this as my main image and then overlay the other image on top. Now, when you're doing so this is my other image, and I'm just going to pull it away, and then I'm going to take that layer. So this layer belongs to this file here. Okay, so I'm going to grab that layer and I'm going to throw it on top of my other one. So you can see now we're back into that original file, and I have 2 layers now. I have the underneath layer and the overtop layer, so both hand positions. You can tell that they're not 100% aligned though. So what I'm going to do is turn down the opacity here, and then I'm just going to grab that with my move tool. I'll be able to grab this layer, and I can now move the layer to realign. Okay, so I am attempting to line up my eyes a little bit as much as I can, but more so I'm looking at the edges of the hat and seeing that the edges of the head align and make sense, okay, because the eyes can somewhat change. There we are. So that's pretty darn close. And now you can turn your opacity back up to 100. So what a mask does, it allows you, when you put a mask on a layer, imagine these are like 2 pieces of paper. You've got your top piece of paper and your bottom one. When you put a mask on and you brush on it, it's kind of like cutting with scissors. So just cutting through this layer to see what's underneath. Okay, so let's see, if I put a regular mask on right here and I select a brush, and make sure your mask is white, so you're going to want to have a black brush. Okay, and then when you paint on, you can see that I'm cutting a hole and the underneath layer is showing through in that hole. Okay, but what I like to do, because this is a difficult way to work, is to put on an inverse mask. So you're basically just going to make this layer invisible, and then you can paint the layer back on. So the way to do that is just to click Option or Alt at the same time that you hit on that mask button. And instead of seeing a white mask, you're going to see a black mask. So essentially what you've done is you've made this an invisible layer. Now with your brush, you're going to want to use a white brush. So I just shortcut key pressed X to switch my colors. Okay, and when I brush through, I'm going to be brushing this layer back on now. Okay, instead of cutting through, I'm brushing on. All right, and I'm basically just going to brush around and replace where the hand currently exists. Okay, so it's going to be as simple as this. There we go. And the hands are gone. Okay, here the hat isn't exactly 100% aligned, so there we go. Just fill in right there. And that's it. That's as much effort as it will take for you to create a composite and keep your baby safe during a session. All right, so sometimes you're going to want to flatten this now, so I use the shortcut Command-Shift-E just to flatten my layers, and then you can, do the rest of your edits and save. I have actually already edited this image, so I'm not going to save any of this. But let's go and look at a little bit more of a difficult situation, such as the one where our heads were not aligned perfectly. Okay, so we'll grab these two images and open that up. All right, now remember here you're going to want to select all before you make any changes in ACR. But today we're basically just looking at the composite, so let's open these up in Photoshop. All right, so here's the image that we're primarily going to be working with, and I'm going to overlay the other one. Okay, so just grab that, separate it, and now take that layer and throw it on top. Okay, so you can see now that the head is not aligned. So decrease the opacity again, and sorry about that. What you're going to want to do is grab your move tool, okay, and you're going to look at aligning. Now we're going to have to do a bit of a tilt here. So if you click on one of the edges and then just lock your proportions, you should be able to now tilt and realign. And that's fairly close. Okay, so hitting enter to save that change, increasing my opacity. Now I'm going to toss my inverse mask on. So I'm hitting Option or Alt and then clicking on the mask so that you're making that layer invisible. And I'm going to press B as a shortcut to open my brush. It's white. Usually I like to pick a soft brush, no hardness to it, so it's very feathered around the edges, 100% opacity. And I am just going to brush her little head back on and get rid of the hand. Okay, now down here I'm going to, because the ear is so close, I'm going to increase my hardness a bit. And I'm also going to decrease size. Great, and now I'll just soften around the edges of that. And you can get larger with your brush as you get further away. So it's not as noticeable. There we are. Okay, and that's it. Again, you have created a composite image out of 2 files. You're going to merge these layers and you can continue on and do the rest of your edits before saving, and that is it. Very simple. Hopefully there aren't that many questions, but if you do have any, you can feel free to use the Canadian Share and Learn Facebook group to you know, ask questions and we can answer them in there. And hopefully everyone can help each other. But I hope you can see now that it's fairly simple to create a composite image, and much, much safer for the baby. All right, thanks for paying attention, and I hope you guys enjoyed your Brunch and Learn experience.